All right, get ready for a deep dive, folks, because we're going to a winter wonderland this time, but with a dark twist.
Ooh, this sounds intriguing.
Yeah, we're unpacking a true crime case surrounding a family's Christmas getaway to their cabin in the Utah mountains.
A cabin in the mountains. Sounds idyllic.
It does, but things take a pretty terrifying turn.
I see.
But what's really captivating about this story is it's not just your typical crime narrative. We're going to be talking about survival, resilience, even forgiveness.
Yes, and the source material you've given me really digs deep into the family's experience,
Exactly.
like their whole journey before, during, and after this tragedy. And it really gives us a glimpse into just how strong people can be in the face of just unimaginable adversity.
It really is like piecing together a puzzle, with each detail kind of revealing a new layer of this story.
Right.
So, to set the scene, let's transport ourselves to Tito's Tranquility.
Tito's Tranquility?
Yeah, it's this idyllic cabin nestled deep in the Utah mountains. Picture a place so remote that in winter, the only way to reach it is by snowmobile.
Wow. A true escape from the world.
Exactly.
So isolated.
Yeah, and the Tidwell family, a mom and dad, two daughters, Len, who is 20, and Kata, who is 16, and their grandmother, they all cherished this seclusion.
It was their sanctuary.
Yeah.
Away from everything, a
Mhm.
place to reconnect, create memories. It's this contrast, that contrast between the peaceful haven they sought and the horrifying events that happened that really draws you in.
Okay, so picture this. Christmas time, 1990.
Hmm.
The Tidwells are heading up to their cabin for their annual holiday celebration.
Their traditions.
Their traditions, yeah, inside jokes.
Stockings hung by the fireplace, gifts under the tree.
Yeah, all that warmth and anticipation. Just
Right.
the stark contrast to what was waiting for them.
Well, and what's truly chilling is that 3 days before Christmas, Len, the older daughter, arrives at the cabin ahead of the rest of her family. And she stumbles into a scene straight out of a nightmare.
Oh, no.
Two armed robbers are inside the cabin. They're already settled in. They've been eating the family's food, even opened some of their Christmas presents.
They're just casually hanging out, opening presents. That's so strange.
It is bizarre, and it definitely raises some questions like, were they waiting for the family?
Oh.
Was this a planned thing, or was their arrival just like an unexpected interruption to something else?
Yeah, that level of premeditation is pretty disturbing.
It is.
So Len walks in, totally unaware, probably excited to set things up for her family. And then, boom, one of the robbers, described as having frizzy hair and wearing a gray sweatshirt, pops out from behind the refrigerator, gun pointed right at her.
Can you imagine?
It's sudden fear.
That moment where everything you thought was safe and secure just shatters. It's life or death right there.
Fear is terrifying.
And tragically, it only gets worse. As Len's mother reaches the top of the stairs, the second robber appears. This one is wearing thick glasses, and he points his gun at her. And just seconds later, gunshots. Len is forced to watch as her mother and grandmother are murdered right in front of her.
That's just horrific. And what makes it even more chilling is that she knew her dad and sister were just minutes away, heading straight into this.
It's just an impossible
It's
situation.
just unimaginable.
The shock, the grief, the desperate need to protect her remaining family, it's overwhelming.
And in that chaos, Len has to think fast. She figures if she can lure the robbers out of the cabin and into the family car, maybe, just maybe, her dad and sister will have a chance to escape.
An incredibly risky plan, but in that moment, what choice did she have?
It's heartbreaking. She's essentially leading them into a trap, knowing the danger that's waiting for them.
It speaks to the impossible choices that victims are often forced to make in these situations.
So her father and Kata arrive, and as you can imagine, they're captured immediately. Her father's shot, Kata is threatened, and the sisters are forced to escape with these robbers on snowmobiles.
And as if that wasn't enough, the robbers reveal their plan to burn the cabin down, with the bodies still inside.
Oh my gosh, that's just cold-blooded. To not only commit these acts, but then try to erase any trace of them, it's just beyond comprehension.
And remember, this is all happening in the Utah mountains, a place of immense beauty, but also isolation. That isolation, which the family had always sought as a refuge, it now becomes a terrifying element of their captivity.
It's like a nightmare come to life. They're speeding away on these snowmobiles surrounded by this vast, unforgiving landscape with two armed men who have already proving how dangerous they are.
And their escape becomes this desperate fight for survival, a race against time with unimaginable stakes. And then they encounter two of their uncles, first Randy, then Ralph.
Okay, so let's talk about these encounters because they add a whole other layer to the story.
They do.
So, first, they see their Uncle Randy, but they know they can't risk acknowledging him, right?
Right. Even the slightest hint of resistance could mean death, not just for them, but for their uncle.
That must have been so agonizing to see a loved one and not be able to reach out.
It is.
And then they encounter their Uncle Ralph, but it's immediately clear something is terribly wrong.
This is where the story takes another heartbreaking turn.
What happened?
Ralph had been beaten, shot, his wife had been killed. And yet, he's still desperately trying to rescue his nieces. He's following them on a snowmobile, even though he's injured, trying to call for help.
Wow. That's just incredible, the lengths people will go to protect those they love.
It's both inspiring and just utterly heartbreaking to know the sacrifice he was willing to make.
So they're fleeing, their uncle is in pursuit, and the robbers are getting more and more desperate. What happens next?
Well, their escape ends in this high-speed car, chase a dramatic plunge off an embankment, and finally capture by the police.
It's like an action movie, but with the very real terror of knowing that lives are on the line.
Right, and for Lynn and Kada, that capture was the beginning of a whole new chapter.
A chapter marked by grief, the search for justice, and a long road to healing.
Yes.
So let's shift our focus to the aftermath. The crime scene at that cabin must have been just incredibly difficult for investigators to process.
Absolutely. Just imagine sifting through the charred remains of what was once a family's cherished retreat, knowing the horrors that happened within those walls.
The bodies of Len's mother and grandmother were recovered.
Right, a stark reminder of the brutality of the crime.
And then there's that videotape.
Yes, the one the robbers made while they were inside the cabin.
Right.
It adds a chilling layer to the story. It shows them not only present in the home, but engaging in these really disturbing behaviors.
Like what?
Opening the family's Christmas presents, laughing, eating their food completely indifferent to the carnage they'd caused.
It's just mind-boggling that they could be so casual in the face of such violence. What does that say about their psychological state? I mean, were they driven by a lack of empathy, a twisted sense of amusement, or was there something even darker going on?
It's a question that experts often ask, trying to understand what motivates people to commit such horrific acts. And in this case, the videotape gives us a disturbing glimpse into their minds, but it also raises questions about their intent. Were they simply opportunistic criminals who escalated to violence? Or was there something more sinister planned?
So the robbers, Von Taylor and Ed Deli, were quickly apprehended, and it turned out they both had a history of criminal activity.
Yes, and their prior convictions suggest this pattern of disregard for the law and the well-being of others.
What were they convicted of before?
Taylor had been convicted of burglary,
Okay.
and Deli had been convicted of arson. And sadly, this pattern culminated in this horrible tragedy.
5 months after the murders, Von Taylor pleads guilty to 2 counts of capital murder.
Right, in exchange for the state dropping all other charges against him.
So that's a pretty common legal strategy, right?
It is, especially when there's a lot of evidence. It guarantees a conviction on the most serious charges, but it saves everyone the time and expense of a full trial. And in Taylor's case, the evidence was overwhelming.
He was sentenced to death for both murders. Did that bring any sense of justice to the Tidwell family?
Well, the death penalty is obviously very complex and controversial,
Yeah.
and there are many different viewpoints about whether it's effective or moral.
Right.
For some, it provides closure, a feeling that the punishment fits the crime. But for others, it raises ethical questions.
And in Taylor's case, Len described him as an evil man who showed absolutely no remorse for his actions.
That lack of remorse can be one of the most difficult things for victims and families to process.
I can only imagine.
It's a complete disregard for human life.
So a few weeks after Taylor's sentencing, Ed Deli went to trial. And both Len and her father had to take the stand and relive those horrific events.
Testifying in court, especially in such a traumatic case, can be incredibly difficult for victims. It forces them to confront the pain and anguish all over again.
But their testimony is often crucial in ensuring that justice is served.
Yes.
And it's actually in the courtroom that Deli realizes that Len's father had survived the shooting. Yeah, and Len described his face as priceless, the look of a man who knew he'd been defeated.
That's a powerful image, a small victory amidst such tragedy.
A testament to her father's will to survive.
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the darkest of moments, there can be these glimmers of hope, these small victories that help sustain us through unimaginable challenges.
But then the verdict came. Deli was found guilty of second-degree murder.
And he was sentenced to life in prison.
The family had hoped for a first-degree murder
Sure,
conviction.
because that would make Delhi eligible for the death penalty.
But one juror held out, and that prevented a unanimous decision on the first-degree murder charge.
Cases like this really highlight the complexities of the legal system. A single juror can have a profound impact on the outcome.
And sometimes, even with overwhelming evidence, the verdict doesn't align with the expectations of the victims or the public.
True.
So, in the aftermath of the trials, the Tidwell family had this daunting task of rebuilding their lives. They found comfort in each other and their community, but the pain of their loss was ever present.
Right.
Lynn, the journey to healing was especially long and difficult. She struggled with so many emotions: anger, fear, and this deep desire for revenge.
Those are all natural reactions to such profound loss and injustice.
Yeah.
It takes immense strength and resilience to process these emotions and find a path towards healing.
And then in 2001, she received an unexpected letter from Ed Deladee. He wanted to apologize for what he did, express remorse, and ask for forgiveness.
Wow.
It's a moment that really makes you think about the possibility of redemption and remorse, even from someone who's committed such a horrific act.
It
It
does.
took Len 9 years to respond to that letter. 9 years of wrestling with her feelings, her desire for retribution, battling with a growing sense of needing to let go to find peace.
Forgiveness is such a deeply personal and complex process.
It is.
It doesn't erase the wrong that was done, and it doesn't excuse the perpetrator, but it can be a powerful step in healing and moving forward.
And for Len, forgiveness became that turning point. She didn't condone Delhi's actions, nor did she believe he deserved to be free. But she chose to forgive him as a way to break free from the anger and bitterness that had been holding her captive for so long. That's really powerful. She could have easily let that anger and bitterness consume her,
Right.
but instead she chose a different path.
She did. And it's important to remember that forgiveness, it doesn't minimize what happened. It doesn't condone those actions.
Of course not.
But it's about letting go of the anger, letting go of the resentment, and allowing yourself to move on.
And in a way, both Len and Kaida embody that.
Resilience.
Yeah, despite experiencing such a profound loss, they both went on to build new lives full of love and hope.
They did. They both got married, had children of their own.
Yeah,
Starting a family after going through something like that is incredibly powerful.
it is.
It's like a statement of belief in the future, a refusal to let the darkness, win. It speaks to just how strong the human spirit really is.
Yeah, our ability to heal, to create new life, even after experiencing something so terrible.
Exactly.
And then there's the decision to rebuild the cabin.
The very place where it all happened.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating and moving decision.
It is. I mean, it would have been understandable if they just wanted to get rid of it, sell it or even demolish it.
Right.
But instead they chose to reclaim it, to turn a place of tragedy into a symbol of hope and resilience.
Almost like they were rewriting the story of that space.
Yeah.
Creating new memories, new experiences
Yeah.
to honor the past, but also celebrate the future.
It's a reminder that our environments, the spaces we inhabit, they can hold both pain and joy.
Right. And healing, it's not about forgetting.
No.
It's about finding ways to integrate the past into the present and moving forward.
This whole story, the Tidwell family's journey, it really is a testament to the strength of the human spirit.
Absolutely, to love, courage, resilience.
It reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, there is a path towards healing.
There is a way to find meaning and purpose, even in the darkest of times.
So I want to leave you all with a question to ponder.
Okay.
What are the sources of strength and resilience in your own life? What helps you navigate those tough times and emerge, maybe a little battered, but still standing? We all face challenges in life.
We do.
And understanding the sources of our own strength, our own resilience, is what allows us not just to survive, but to truly thrive.
To live lives that are meaningful, purposeful, and full of hope.
That's it for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another fascinating story.